Good day and welcome to our second season of Harbourside Chat. I am Governor John Rolle of the Central Bank of the Bahamas, and today we're filming a conversation on the margin of the second biannual macroeconomic conference on the Caribbean, and we're at the Atlantis Resort on Paradise Island. I'm very pleased to be joined by Dr. Alexandre Tombini. He is the Chief Representative for the Bank for International Settlements in their area office for the Americas, which is in Mexico. And just for information, that office serves all of the BIS constituents in the Caribbean and Latin America region. So before joining the Bank for International Settlement, Mr. Tombini was the executive director he was an executive director on the board of the International Monetary Fund. He represented Brazil and a number of Caribbean countries, including the Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, and a few others. And he's also had a very illustrious career in central banking. Before moving to the IMF, he would have served previously as deputy governor and governor of the Central Bank of Brazil. Today, we are speaking about his past experiences as a central banker, and we're talking, given the very important work that the Bank for International Settlement does in payments and innovation, in terms of what that work means for countries in the Latin America and the Caribbean region. So Alexandre, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Well, Governor Rolle, it's my pleasure to be in this conference and here in this dialogue with you. We have a working relationship with the Central Bank of the Bahamas, in the BIS in general, and specifically in our office here in the Americas, as you mentioned. So it's great to be here and to share with your audiences, the work we do at the BIS and more specifically in the region. As you know, the BIS is the bank of central banks, so we do serve the central banks in their financial side, but we also are a platform for interactions on the various topics that central banks are interested globally and in this region. So I think in this respect, having been a governor myself in the past and having had this experience of representing countries at the IMF, at the board of the IMF, including, as you mentioned, a number of countries here in the region, in the Caribbean, I think prepares me to delve into the issues that central banks are interested. So I have the privilege to be in that position with the kind of background that I have had in my last 30 years, I should say.
So it was a natural progression, moving to the BIS.
Right, in some respect, is going back to the central banks, right? Because I was governor of the central bank, then I went to the IMF, and as you know, IMF is a lot about monetary and financial policies issues, but also on the fiscal, on the structural reform. So after that experience, I go back to the world of the central banks, which is the bread and butter of the Bank for International Settlements as the bank of central banks.
And while you were at the IMF, as I was just hinting, countries typically group together into constituencies and they have a representative on the board, with a few exceptions. You were there representing Brazil, and it's quite a diverse set of countries. How did you manage the varying, or in some cases perhaps conflicting, interests of these countries in terms of being their representative at the IMF?
I will say that it's a challenge to bundle together all these different jurisdictions, but at the same time, it gives you access to several different caucuses within the structure of the IMF. So I represented a fragile economy. I represented small islands. I represented the biggest, perhaps, emerging market country, which is Brazil, because China sometimes is classified as emerging market, but China is a different category. So you have all this and spread in 3 or 4 continents, because we had Cabo Verde in the constituents, we had Timor-Leste, so we had Africa and Asia, the Caribbean, Central America, South America. So your voice is heard in different caucus. So when you go to the global discussions and you have to accommodate the interest, first, I mean, you have sort of a strong voice because you have all these different dimensions coming from your statements. And what I used to do in the constituency was to sort of coordinate internally to make sure that the countries were comfortable with the position that we were putting forward at the more political level. But I think it's a challenge, but it's also a strength of having such a diverse countries to represent.
And I can relate to that because when I was at the IMF, I worked along with the Canadians and the Irish, and a constituency that also had a lot of Caribbean countries represented. So I appreciate the sort of collaboration that took place between the constituency bloc that you would have represented. And so there was, I guess, almost a teamwork insofar as focusing on the needs of small countries. So that was quite an experience.
Right, totally, yes. There was very, very good coordination between these two chairs that represented, the whole universe of countries in the Caribbean.
Yeah. And as central bankers, there's always an element of research that continues in terms of the work that we do. Mm-hmm. And I note that in all of your diverse research interests, you did some work recently on digital finance and financial inclusion. So tell us why you believe exploring these topics in greater details is important for this region.
Yeah, I think the digitalization of the economy and in particular the financial sector has been great. If you take just the payment area that you know very well, and you have been a pioneer in this domain, so we saw the adoption of digital payments growing very rapidly in the last, say, 10 years in emerging market countries. I mean, amongst the adult population, the use of digital payments grew from, say, 35 to almost 60%, so in a very short period of time. And we identified there was very little research on the sort of macroeconomic impacts of this push towards digitalization in payments. So we wanted to see the relationship between the greater use of digital means of payments and, say, economic growth, GDP growth, reduction of informality, and financial inclusion. And so that's why we focus with a few other colleagues of the BIS Americas office and also the American Enterprise Institute, Steve Cummings. So we study precisely those relationships, and we found very robust and significant impacts of higher use of digitalization impacting higher growth and reduction in informality and enhancement of financial inclusion. 1 percentage point increase in the use of digital payments generate an impact in our models, controlling for a lot of other variables that affect this relationship. An increase of 0.10% in GDP growth over 2 years, a reduction in 0.06 in informality, and a robust push towards more financial inclusion. So this is very relevant because you're talking about 1 percentage point increase. So in the use of digital payments, which can go from 0 to 100. So it's very important for a region like ours, where you have several developing countries where digitalization is not that big now. So by increasing the use of digital means of payments, you have a great potential to affect economic growth and reduce informality, among other things.
No, that's a very important point because when you look at what we're trying to do in the Bahamas, a part of it is extending the reach of financial services to more of the population. And the point you make about making certain that people are able to be brought in to the formal side of the economy is very important, as opposed to just being kept in the informal sector. So that's very important. Now, I understand that in terms of the pioneering work that Brazil has done in payments, that you were there for a good bit of that work. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I think that was back in the early 2010s, I should say, like around 2012, 2013. We were discussing in the Central Bank of Brazil this intersection between advances in technology and the financial system. And we had the whole agenda of enhancing efficiency, more competition in the financial system. So the idea was to create more competition in an environment, a digitalized environment. So there was an initiative, which was a law, which was finally approved in October 2013. The law basically was one preparing, it's called today the e-money law, but was to, the objective was to prepare the country for sort of a digitalization of the financial system. What the central bank didn't want to reproduce in the digital world, the smartphone space or the mobile phone space, we didn't want to reproduce the architecture of credit cards, which was already there available. Mm-hmm. We wanted something more direct and more competitive, more affordable to the population. And so this is the basis of future development that we had in Brazil, like with the implementation of PIX 7 years later.
Yes, and I know that right now, lots of countries in the region are studying the Brazilian case very closely, and even looking at how they can adopt, the technology in their local payment space. And now you're at the BIS, and the BIS is a pioneer as well in terms of innovations in digitization. One of the areas that we know that the BIS is doing work is on I think in the area of addressing privacy and other issues that we speak about when we talk about central bank digital currency and other payments, and trying to balance those issues against making certain that these systems are still, well protected against, criminality and other ills. Mm-hmm. So when we're looking at central bank digital currencies and innovations in the Caribbean region, is there anything that we should be taking from the BIS work? I think you call it Project Aurora, or is it Project Harum?
Harum.
Yes.
Yeah. The BIS Innovation Hub, this new part of the BIS that was created in our Agenda 2025, is looking into sort of practical solutions that could become like public goods that the central banks could implement or not. But yes, this project, it looks into the privacy issue. The privacy issue, as we know, is fundamental for consumers or clients of the payment system, of the banking system. And the losses by not protecting privacy are major. And one particular one is the confidence that users have in a payment system or in a digital currency system. So this is very important to protect. What this project does is it has an architecture, a two-tier architecture. On the wholesale level, there is an interbank system, and on the retail level, there is a e-wallet system. Mm-hmm. And only the intermediaries that have responsibilities with KYC, AML, anti-money laundering responsibilities are the only ones that can see the identity of the owners of these tokens, which transit in the payment system. So no central bank has access to the identity of the token owners. So in this way, it's a privacy built-in system which helps. I think it's worth taking a look in this kind of projects. But of course, the issue of privacy, even with this very preserving of privacy technologies, at the end of the day, you have to balance between pure privacy and security concerns. But I do agree with where you're going. I mean, it's a very important concept that needs to be preserved.
And I think too, another important line of work at the BIS is on moving payments across border and connecting up persons at the retail level in terms of sending payments, particularly given the importance of remittances and what is being documented as the high cost of sending remittances across countries. So I know that there is the Project Nexus, which looks at how you can link together the fast or instant payment systems in other countries. We've started to look at the Caribbean level as to how we can begin to connect our retail system to payment, just at the conceptual stage right now. But I just wanted to know from your perspective, looking at something such as Project Nexus, how important or how should we be thinking in the Caribbean region in terms of how we position ourselves with such a project?
Yeah, I mean, Nexus, as you mentioned, is a project of the BIS Innovation Hub.
Yes.
Singapore involved 5 countries in the Asia Pacific region. They have, it consists in interlinking the fast payment systems operated by central banks or private operators. Mm-hmm. Right now, the Nexus has. So the BIS has handed the Nexus to the countries themselves, and they have an organization that oversees Nexus. But the idea, as you know, in cross-border payments, you have to look into some particular issues. For example, the frameworks for KYC and AML may differ across jurisdictions, so this could hinder closer integration of fast payments. There is also the issue of the settlement currency. I mean, if you have all these bilateral currencies, maybe it will complicate the integration, but if you have a common settlement currency like US dollar in this part of the world, it can mitigate this issue. So, yeah, I think all the benefits that we talk about fast payments, I think they are multiplied when you talk about integrating fast payment cross-border. And here, close by, we have the experience of Central America. I think the SIPA, the Sistema de Interconexión de Pagos, mm-hmm. System of interconnecting the RTGS, the real gross time settlement structures of the central banks, the respective central banks there are already integrated for many years. Now they have added a layer of fast payment system on top of it, the Transfer 365 and Transfer 365 mobile. So in this regard, they will move the cross-border from delayed to a sort of quasi-instant, but you have to have all the other ancillary conditions like sort of standardizing KYC and AML procedures and having a common settlement.
And I know that there's also some work being done in this area, and that's important because if we're talking about making it easier to make payments across the border, we're not pulling back in terms of how we protect the system against improper use. And so the information format and the standardization is important. Right. How do we deal in such an approach with the privacy and the control that individuals have over their information? Because I know that's also something that there is interest around.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think at the end of the day, this is about personal data, personal information. I mean, there's a lot of content of this privacy issue in the financial system, in the payment system. So We have had, well, first we talk about privacy preserving technologies, zero knowledge and pseudonymization and other, so this is there. But there is also the other side of the coin, which is we want to empower the financial consumer, right? We want to give them the possibility to choose, pick and choose amongst the competition. And one alternative that some countries, a few countries have followed is this open data, open finance, open banking, payment initiation, right? So in this regard, you securely share your financial information through an authorized third party that you have explicitly authorized. So in this respect, the idea is to protect your personal data, but allow you to have a wider selection and wider availability of financial products. So you have to balance those things.
And how does the BIS feel about the idea of open banking, or does the BIS offer any advice or guidance as to how countries should be, approaching this topic?
Yeah, well, BIS is following this topic. Again, some countries, we know the UK, Brazil, and other countries in Asia are following this. This is an important avenue to be explored. But of course, this is a domestic decision. Sometimes goes much beyond the remit of central banks or regulators, because you're talking about personal information being shared. You're talking about digital identities, things like that, which are a broader discussion. So it depends on each country. It's a political decision how much you want to progress in this domain. But yes, there are some experience which are successful. Brazil, I think, is one point in case. There was the PIX. Now they are making progress in open banking that goes beyond the sharing of information in the banking relationship, but also insurance, investments, foreign exchange. So you can, provided that you authorize the third parties to have access to your financial information and improve your decision making in terms of financial, broadly speaking, financial service. So it's something that I would say, yeah, we see the validity, we are following, but it's at the end of the day a very important decision that national authorities have to.
So I know that once you start to talk about open banking and having, fintech solutions and other plugins to the banking system, the attention also increases on the security of the system from cyber concerns and the like. What's the advice or thinking in terms of how we should be approaching cybersecurity issues?
Yeah, I think with this new technology, with artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence, I think these events have become more complex, perhaps more frequent, and so on and so forth. But there is also the investment of these new technologies in deterring this expansion of cyber attacks, cyber events, right? So we do have some projects also in the BIS Innovation Hub. One, to mention, is Project Aurora, which combines vast amounts of digital payment data with machine learning, with network analysis, and it's demonstrated that in terms of detecting frauds in the payment system, detecting unusual operations and money laundering, it's more effective than the current technologies in spotting this kind of issues, which we can broadly talk about cybersecurity as well. So yeah, I think central banks and the BIS, it's helping in the use of these technologies to mitigate, to prevent the incident of cyber.
For small countries, we also are going to question what it cost us to fully implement those types of solutions. So my question would be, in the work that you're doing, are you thinking about how these solutions would be scalable to very small countries, say like those in the Caribbean?
I would say that yes, no, in the sense that, well, these new technologies, I mean, they're only meaningful when they are affordable. I mean, we used to have very sophisticated technology that is not pervasive, it's very costly, but even in the artificial intelligence domain, we have seen that perhaps the costs are not as huge as they originally were being predicted. So I think to scale up, this technology has to be general purpose technology, and it seems like it's going in this direction. So I would say I will have an optimistic view in terms of this solution also applying to smaller jurisdictions at a reasonable cost, right?
Very good. So finally, we've talked a lot about payments and innovation, and I think in the Caribbean region, we still have a good amount of distance left ahead of us in terms of even the modernization of our frameworks, even in the retail space. Is there a particular emerging trend or issue that you would encourage us to keep focused on or to keep paying attention to? Is there any one?
Well, I would say three, if you allow me.
Good.
But one of them is the sort of the use of stable coins in cross-border payments and more broadly in payments, right? So this is something that central banks have to follow closely, in my opinion. I mean, to make sure that, the fiduciary money is still prevalent and follow the implications of the wider use of this for currency substitution and other issues. So this is one. The other one is tokenization. I think tokenization in payments has the promise to be quite impactful. I mean, when you combine tokenized, a digital representation of real assets, financial assets, central bank reserves, and commercial bank deposits in a programmable platform, this also has the promise of sort of reducing the cost and streamlining the whole process and allowing other things that are not available today, like composability, programmability, combination of several different operations simultaneously. So I think this is an important development that we need to keep an eye on. It has the potential to have a major impact in the payment system. And the last we just talked about, which is the use of artificial intelligence. I think in this regard, we should look into an agenda to use these instruments to make the payment system and the digital cash environment more resilient to the kind of challenges that we face today.
So thank you very much, Alexandre, for the time that you spent having this conversation, as well as for your contribution to our conference.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
And thanks also to our audience for joining us. Episodes of Harbourside Chats are available for viewing on our social media platforms. These are also broadcast in partnership with ZNS and Guardian Radio. And as always, we invite you to send us comments or questions. Our email address is Harbourside Chat with an S, at centralbankbahamas.com. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again.